Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. In my last episode, I explored the topic of how minds change with my guest. And in this episode, we are taking that theme from the abstract and academic to the real and extreme. Recently, I learned about a modern hero. When I first learned about him, my jaw dropped. The story of this man was one of the greatest things I had ever heard, and I'm so grateful he agreed to meet. Daryl Davis is an African-American piano player who has played with the best of the best. We're talking B.B. King, Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, and other household names. He's an author and actor who you may have seen on HBO's The Wire, and a martial artist. But most incredible, he is a man who has single-handedly befriended men in the KKK and other white supremacy groups, and over time, assisted them in thinking through their decisions. As a result, he has helped over 200 men out of that life. He has been written about extensively, and he's given a well-watched TED Talk, and there's even a great documentary about him called Accidental Courtesy that you can purchase on Amazon Video. You will love learning from this extraordinary man. So listen in on how a Black musician skillfully helped over 200 men get out of the Klan. Daryl Davis, a hearty welcome to Super Psyched.
Thank you, Adam. Glad to be here.
Oh, I am so excited about this. You know, if anybody has the street cred of a legit Jedi walking the path of helping people, it would be you. When I first heard about you, somebody would have had to pick my jaw up off the floor. Couldn't believe how, given what we know about cognitive science and how difficult it is to change minds, that you are able to do that at the highest level. I know you are a martial artist and a musician, and I imagine all of those skills and traits, as well as someone who's lived over abroad and overseas and seen many cultures, that all of these skills come to the fore. But one of the things that you and I are going to talk about is how to impart these skills to people who just need to be able to connect and talk to people whose opinions differ, and possibly to find some form of decent and kind behavior. So you've been able to help change the minds of rigid thinking Klansmen by knowing who you were and knowing who they were. And I heard you say those words. You knew who you were, you knew who they were. And I was wondering if you could talk about those two steps, about knowing who you are and knowing who they are, so that you can have a good conversation as a foundation. Those two things seem to be right at the bottom.
Absolutely. You got to know who you are. You have to be open-minded. You have your ideology, your belief system, etc., but realize that there are others also in the world besides yourself. So know who you are, and, you can be flexible. You can be open-minded, but listen to others. A lot of people are afraid to listen to other people because they're afraid they might become influenced and will mess up what they already believe in or what path they're taking. But if you know who you are, then you're pretty set. But you're open-minded, open to ideas, open to suggestions. And maybe you might take a different path if it's to your benefit or to the benefit of others, but at least who you are and where you stand. But equally important is to know who the other person is. Why do they have this ideology that differs so much from your own? What was their path in life that took them there? If you had taken their path, could you perhaps also have that same ideology? So don't get angry. Rather than get furious, get curious. Okay? So sit back and listen. One thing, that you mentioned, I've traveled a lot. Yes, I have. I'm a professional musician. I have my degree in music and make a living traveling around playing music. I've played in all 50 states. And as a kid, I was a child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service. So starting at the age of 3, I began traveling the world. And now when you combine my childhood travels with my adulthood travels, performing or lecturing around the world, put them together, I've been in 61 countries on 6 continents. And all that is to say that I have been exposed to a multitude of religions, ethnicities, skin colors, ideologies, etc., cultures. And all of that has helped shape who I have become. Let me give you my favorite quote of all time. It's by Mark Twain, and it's called the travel quote. And Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely upon these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." And that is so true. All this travel does not make me a better human being than somebody else. But what it does is it gives me a better and broader perspective of humanity. So that's how I'm able to sit in a group of white supremacists or any other people that I disagree with and listen to them and not become all enraged and all that kind of thing, because I just consider them another culture. And I've already seen cultures from all around the world. And here's what I picked up, Adam. No matter how far, I've been doing this now for 40 years, no matter how far I travel from my own country, the United States, whether it's next door to Canada or next door to Mexico or halfway around the globe, no matter how different the people may be with whom I speak, they don't look like me, they don't speak my language, they don't worship as I do, whatever. I always conclude one thing, and that is that everyone, no matter where they are, what station in life they're at or whatever, everyone wants these 5 basic core values in their lives. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be respected. Everyone wants to be heard. We all want to be treated fairly and truthfully. And we all want the same things for our family as anyone else would want for their family. And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values or any of those 5 values when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation or in a culture or society in which we're unfamiliar, I can guarantee that the navigation will go much more smooth and much more positive. And this can be applied to any controversial topic. It doesn't have to be about race. For example, while we have other hot topics in the world today, in our country, abortion, the last presidential election, the current upcoming presidential election, nuclear weapons, global warming, the environment, whatever. These are all hot topics. You're on one side, she's on the other, or whatever. You apply those values, the navigation of that conversation, of that adversity will become much more smooth and much more positive. And, like I said, you learn the other person's point of view before you go into it. And that helps you to see their path. That's not to change your mind necessarily, but people tend to respect you when they find out that you know something about them in advance. And so that makes the conversation a lot better.
I couldn't agree more. And it seems as though part of the code that you've cracked has been be a curious anthropologist, be scientific, and be genuinely curious with the knowledge of those 5 basic core values, that everyone has these things in common, even if they go about them differently.
Right.
And I can't help but imagine that part of the magic in your creation is that you are a musician who has played various types of music, that you, as a Black man, played country western, which is a bit of a bridge.
Actually, believe it or not, that's the stereotypical thinking. But let me tell you something. The father of country music, Hank Williams Sr., okay?
Yes.
He learned to play guitar from a Black blues street guitar player, a guy named Rufus T-Tot Payne. And Rufus was, as I said, a Black blues guitar player. He would play on the streets of Montgomery, Alabama, with his guitar case open so passersby would throw coins in there or whatever. Just like B.B. King did on Beale Street when he was coming up in Memphis. So anyway, Hank Williams Sr., as a teenager, like around the age of 15, was fascinated with Rufus. He would go down there on the sidewalk every day and watch this guy play. And in exchange for sandwiches that Hank would make at home and bring to Rufus, Rufus gave Hank guitar lessons.
Okay, so basically you are blowing my mind right now. So even country music has Black roots. And
country music and the blues are kissing cousins. They both use the same 3 chords. To me, Patsy Cline, Hank Williams, Jimmy Rogers, they are blues singers. They are singing from the heart, from the soul, from the gut. They are feeling what they're singing. Listen to a song called Move It On Over. It's by Hank Williams. It's a straight up blues. Listen to the same song by George Thorogood. He just rocked it up a little bit. All right. Same exact song. It's society that puts us in boxes and separates us. But country and blues are the same music.
Where I was going with that, and I'm so glad you shared that, is that you have a good ear. You have a really good ear, and you can sync with your instrument and others. And kind of similar to knowing who you are and being able to enter another's world. I imagine that being a musician all these years has helped you with that process of being able to have a meaningful conversation with someone whose opinions differ so greatly from yours, and your ability to tune in and really listen and do that thing that we all know that we should do, which is kind of consistent with that idea. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And by you showing up to someone's home and saying, listen, you and I are really different, or having them come to your home and saying, listen, I know you and I are really different. I know about you. I've taken the time to learn about you, and I want to continue to learn about you. And that is, from what I hear, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You show your care. You don't necessarily say, I'm giving you a pass and saying that's okay, because empathy is not about that. Empathy is about just demonstrating you understand the other person. So you are highly empathic, highly attuned. And that seems to be part of the secret to how you do your thing.
And I'll give you another part, is this. Your most valuable asset, no matter how much money you have or how many degrees you have behind your name, et cetera, your most valuable asset is your credibility. You only have one opportunity to make a good first impression. You may have a second opportunity, a third opportunity to make an impression if you're lucky, but you only have one opportunity to make a good first impression. And that is the most important thing. So you want to be credible. You want to be transparent. Because, when I meet with these people who hate me, who don't like me, they don't like sitting across from me, and because I am inferior, they are superior. That's what makes them a supremacist. So I listen to them. And then, of course, I want to follow up with them. So if I say to them, hey, listen, I appreciate the information you gave me. Let me process a little bit. It's okay if I give you a call in 2 weeks. I might have some follow-up questions. If I was not credible the first time around, even though they don't like me, they're going to say, if I was not credible, they're going to say, no, we're done.
We're good.
We're good. If I am credible, even though they may not like me, they'll say, yeah, okay. I mean, it's like you take somebody out on a date for the first time. If that person is impressed, then chances are you can ask that person out again.
Yep.
If they're not impressed that first time, forget it. They'll have some excuse as to why they can't make the next date.
So there's these two things that you're holding right now, the first impression as well as the long game, that you recognize that your first impression really matters. And I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but also that this is not a one and done. This is going to be a multifaceted conversation. And the goal is not necessarily to change minds in the first meeting, not even the second meeting, but this is a long game. And I'm wondering if you could share, just to that earlier point, how do you create a good first impression?
By being honest and being credible. Like, they have their own perceptions of things, which obviously are flawed. That's why they're in those organizations. But you want to be transparent. You want to be credible. And so when you venture something to them, if it's your opinion, tell them, hey, listen, I don't know for sure, but I strongly feel this is my opinion that I'm giving you. Let them know up front it's your opinion. Because then if it turns out that you're wrong, then, that reinforces what they thought about you all along. You're an idiot.
Totally.
So you don't try to present your opinion as being a fact, because if it's wrong, it shoots down any credibility you ever had with them. If you're going to give them a fact, tell them, hey, this is a fact. I know this for a fact. Here's where you yourself can discover this fact. Okay. So always differentiate. That way it protects you. So if your opinion ends up being flawed, you don't support what they already thought about you, because you already told them, hey, I'm not really sure, but this is my opinion based on my experience or whatever.
What's so cool about hearing you say this, Daryl, is Donald Winnicott, who's one of the earlier British psychoanalysts, once said something like psychological health can be demonstrated by allowing a person to know who you are and having the space to know another person. And what you're describing is really on point with that idea that let them know who you are by being credible and sharing who you are, but not at the expense of showing them you know them. You show them you know them. And that seems to have been one of the biggest predictors. So let's talk about that. You've helped usher through their, as you described it, I loved it. You said, didn't just take them out. I helped them kind of get in touch with who they were so they let themselves out. And I love that distinction. But this was over 200 people. The ripple effect of these 200 people, this is the biggest story, as far as I'm concerned, ever. This is so important. Can you describe to me how you check yourself as you're listening to somebody who's saying something so toxic that it may be hard for you to hear? You may even find yourself wincing, and you've even been to a cross burning. I mean, you've seen and done it all. How do you check yourself in the midst of all this?
Because I know who I am and I figured out who they are. Okay. So let me give you a perfect example that's happened numerous times.
For sure.
I'm sitting across the table in person with some KKK leader, and I'm asking that person, just met the person 5 minutes ago when they walked into the room to be interviewed. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? You just see me for the first time. Well, Mr. Davis, you have to understand one thing. Black people are prone to crime. And this is evidenced by the fact that there are more Black people in prison than white people. Now, he is absolutely 100% correct because the statistics and facts data will show that. And that's all he needs to support his negative image of Black people. He sees them in prison. There are more Blacks than there are whites there. And plus the data shows that there are more. So it supports his narrative that Black people are more prone to crime. He does not need to dig any further. So what he does not see is the imbalance in our judicial system that sends Blacks to prison for a longer period of time than a white perpetrator who has committed the same crime. I don't attack him. I mean, even though he just sat 2 feet from me and called me a criminal or I'm criminally minded. So I just listen. I listen. You know, I mentioned those 5 things. People want to be loved. They want to be respected. They want to be heard. They want to be treated fairly and truthfully. And they want the same things for their family as we want for ours. So I'm giving him that respect, but it's important to understand when I say I'm respecting somebody, it does not necessarily mean that I'm respecting what they're saying. I'm respecting their right to say it. So I just sit back and listen. No, the guy's already insulted me. That's fine. It doesn't matter. And I'll tell you why in a second. So he goes on to say that Black people are inherently lazy, that we don't want to work. We prefer to scam the government welfare system. We always have our hands out for some kind of freebie program or whatever. So now I'm being told I'm lazy. The guy doesn't know me. And so I'm just sitting there listening. And then here's the one. He says that Black people are born, and I've heard this many times, Black people are born with a smaller brain than white people. And that seems to be a common narrative in that circle. The larger the brain, the more capacity there is for intelligence. The smaller the brain, the lower the IQ. So now I'm being called basically stupid.
Stupid, right?
And he says that this is evidenced by the fact that every year, Black kids in school score lower on the SATs than white kids. Again, he's 100% correct. The statistics and data will show that. But what he does not see is the fact that where do most Black kids go to school in this country?
Right.
In the inner city. Where do most white kids go to school? In the suburbs. There's a well-known fact, not an opinion, but a fact, that the inner city schools are not funded and don't have the great facilities and great teachers that the suburban schools do. And I will guarantee you that a Black kid who goes to school in the suburbs can score just as high, if not higher, than some of the white kids. A white kid who goes to school in the inner city can score just as low, if not lower, than some of the Black kids. It has absolutely nothing to do with the color of that child's skin, but has everything to do with the educational system in which that child is enrolled. And that's why you, my parents, your parents, and anybody else, whenever they're moving somewhere and they have little kids, first thing they want to do is make sure they're in an area where the kid is going to go to a good school.
So true.
But see, because the data supports those SAT scores, that fits exactly what they've always thought about us. At the end, the guy has called me a criminal, told me I'm lazy, and now I'm dumb. So is what he is saying offensive? Of course it's offensive. Am I offended? Absolutely not. And why is that? Because I know who I am. This guy just walked into the room 5 minutes ago. He doesn't know me. All he sees is this, my skin color.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm going to allow him to define me by my skin color. When I get angry about it, that is supporting what he already thinks. I am edifying what he already believes. Okay. So I know myself. What he is saying is totally untrue. When it applies to me, And so why should I get angry about a lie from somebody who doesn't even know me? I know I've never been on welfare. I have no criminal record. And guess what? My SATs got me into college. He barely made it out of high school.
That's right.
Okay. So I don't throw that in his face.
Of course not.
Okay.
That's a conversation ender, I imagine.
Right. So what you want to do is I have every right to go on the offense and say, no, you're the criminal. You're the people hanging people who look like me from trees and dragging us behind pickup trucks and bombing our churches and committing all these crimes. I would be 100% right. But if I attack him, then he shuts down. He no longer listens to what I have to say. So what I do is rather than go on the offense, I go on the defense and say, well, hey, I understand, what you're saying. But then I go on to explain why the data shows that. The data is just showing what's happening. It's not showing why that happens. And I give that to him. And then when he goes home and does his little research and finds out that I'm true, it supports my credibility. He's used to pushing people's buttons and they're ready to duke it out with them.
Yep.
So he's baffled as to why he said all these things to me and I have not reacted. So that brings his curiosity up and his ears are opening. And that's what you want to do. Another thing you want to do is this. As a psychologist, that one's perception is one's reality.
Yep.
Even if it's not real, it's their reality.
Exactly.
Okay. And you cannot change somebody's reality. Because, I tell people all the time, when you see my name in the media, it says Black musician converts X number of white supremacists or KKK people. No, that's not true. I did not convert even one, but I have been the impetus for over 200 to convert themselves. Okay, now how does that happen? I cannot change their reality. Their reality tells them that I am inferior and they are superior because of all the reasons I just gave you. Me being on welfare, me being a criminal, me being dumb, and all that kind of stuff. I cannot change their reality. What you want to do, if you want their reality to change, is offer them a better perception or better perceptions, plural. Because if they resonate with one of your perceptions, they will change their own reality because their perception becomes their reality. So I'll give you an example real quick. Let's say you have a 7 or 8 year old brother and he goes off to some magic show with his buddies and their parents. And he comes back and tells you, Adam, you're not going to believe this. This magician on stage, he asked for a female volunteer and 50 women raised their hand. And he picked one out of the audience, had her come up on stage. He told her to climb into this long box and put her feet out that hole and put her head out this hole. And then he closed the lid. He took a chainsaw and went right down the middle. He cut the box in half and he told her to wiggle her feet. And she wiggled her feet, and then you tell him, well, listen, it didn't happen that way. Yes, it did. I was there. You were not there. You didn't see it. I saw it with my own eyes. See what happens? You have challenged his reality and you're going to get pushback. He knows what he saw. He knows that magician cut that woman in half because he saw her get in the box, stretch out, feet there, head there, and the saw went right through the middle of the box. So you cannot tell him about what he did not see, okay? Because you are attacking his reality and you're pissing him off. So give you more evidence that what happened was real. He tells you after the guy cut the woman in half and she wiggled her feet, he took the half of the box with the feet and moved it over to stage right. And then the half of the head, he moved that over to stage left. And he went over there and he spoke to the head of the woman and she spoke back to him. And then he brought the two halves back together. He did some abracadabra incantation above the box. And then he opened the lid and she climbed out full form, no blood. He cut her in half. And you tell him, listen, it was an illusion. No, it wasn't. I'm telling you, right? Again, you're attacking his reality. He knows what he saw. So rather than attack somebody's reality, you give your 7 or 8 year old brother a better perception. You offer him a better perception. You say, listen, I understand what you're saying, but let me ask you, do you think it's possible that maybe, just perhaps, that when he asked for that female volunteer and 50 women raised their hands, that the one he chose, maybe she works for him? Maybe he planted her in the audience. She knows the trick and she travels all around the country with him and sits in that same seat in whatever theater that they're in. So he can spot her and bring her up. And then when she climbs into the box, there's already a pair of mannequin legs that are laying in the box and the floor of the box that are wearing the same stockings and same shoes that she has on. She simply picks up those legs and shoves them out the hole, and she brings her own knees up under her chest. So her whole body is on that side of the box. So when he cuts the box in half and he tells her to wiggle her feet, she just grabs those poles and just shakes those shoes outside that hole. And then when he separates those two halves, obviously the feet can't move anymore because she can't reach them if that box is all the way over there. So he has to direct your attention away from those legs. So he goes over to the head where the whole body is. And of course, you're going to follow him, right? And so he's talking to the head and she's talking back. So in that way, your attention is off those dummy legs that you thought were hers. Then he brings the two boxes back together and he does his little thing. And then he opens it back up and she climbs out, no blood. Of course, she pulls those legs back, leaves them laying in the box, and she climbs out. And then your brother says, that might be the only way that can work. You've given him a better perception, which has resonated, and he has thus changed his own reality. That's what we need to do. Not try to force somebody to change their reality. It's not going to work. And that's where the conflict comes.
So too often we use a wrecking ball. We almost think that being right will win the fight. And you're saying being right will not win the fight. You want to actually instill a modicum of curiosity as well as doubt. And that can only be the byproduct of creating a relationship. And before we get there, you're also speaking to confirmation bias. We all look to things like, okay, more African Americans are in jail and therefore we draw our conclusion. And so confirmation bias versus kind of doing a true root cause analysis, like, well, let's see if there's more to the story here. And of course, there is. And you do this so well. One of my favorite stories about you in dealing with someone's inner 8-year-old at a magic show. And I love that metaphor because I think we all have an inner 8-year-old at a magic show.
I saw David Copperfield make an elephant vanish from the stage. And that was real.
That was real. I love that. One of the things that you did actually kind of like David Copperfield, which felt like, frankly, a magic trick, except it was life-changing and totally real, was that conversation that you had with that gentleman who basically told you that you were a murderer just waiting to happen. And I was wondering if you could share the magic show story through the lens of that interaction with that guy. I could not get over that story.
Sure, absolutely. Also, when you're with somebody and you're going to offer suggestions or perceptions or whatever, you got to find out, does that person make their decisions primarily based upon their logic, their sense of logic, or do they make them primarily based upon their sense of emotion?
So you check in with like yourself and ask yourself, which type is this? Who am I talking to here?
Exactly. And one thing you can do to ascertain that information subtly is to say to somebody, what do you think about President Biden's or President Trump's policy on blah, blah, blah? Or what do you think about blah, blah, blah? If they say, well, I think such and such, they're thinking, they're more logical.
So
if they say, well, I feel that what they feel, they're more emotional. So whichever one, because we all make decisions based upon emotion and logic. But for some of us, one outweighs the other. You might be, say, 80% logic, 20% emotional. I might be 20% logic and 80% emotional. So you got to figure out who you're talking to and how they make their decisions. And then you appeal to that part of their psyche. Because if you're dealing with somebody who's logical, like say a scientist or a lawyer or a judge in a courtroom, everything has to be factual, data-driven.
Not emotion-driven.
It's not emotion-driven, okay? The fact is you ran the red light. I don't care how you were feeling.
Right. That objectively happened.
Exactly. So if you're dealing with somebody who makes decisions based upon logic, do not give them an emotional argument. You will fall flat on your face. If they make decisions based upon emotion, don't try to reason with them using logic. That's not how they make their decision. You have to appeal to their emotion.
That would fall under the show them, you know them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we have to do. And we learn how to do that. And I learned how to do it naturally because I've dealt with so many different kinds of people.
Sure. So let's talk about that interaction that you had where you were able to instill that cognitive dissonance in the car.
Okay, so this Klan leader, he was a district leader, was in my car, in my passenger seat. And we were riding around and I was driving, talking about crime and Black people committing crime. And he said, well, you say They is the unseen body of authority. They say all of a sudden, that
Who is they?
exactly. Or they say that all Black people have a gene within them that makes them
A latent
prone to
killer.
crime.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, who's doing all the drive-bys and carjackings in Southeast? He was referring to Southeast Washington, D.C., which is predominantly Black and a high crime-ridden area. There are some whites that live there, but it's predominantly Black. I said, okay, it's Black people, but that's what lives there. You're not taking into consideration the demographics. I said, who's committing all the crime up in Bangor, Maine? White people, because that's what lives there. He goes, no, that has nothing to do with it. You all have this gene. I said, look, man, I'm as Black as anybody you've ever seen. I have never committed a carjacking or a drive-by. How do you explain that? This guy did not pause for 1 second. He answered me like that. He said, your gene is latent, hasn't come out yet. He had an answer for everything. I was speechless for the first time in my life. I'm dumbfounded. Well, the gene almost came out right then. But, I mean, how do you even grab onto that concept and break it apart? It's so far out.
Except you did.
Yeah, I did.
Well, grab onto it.
I had to think, okay, so that's how he's reasoning. So I have to use the same kind of reasoning with him.
Totally.
In order to get him
So even you were taken for a spin as well as you know yourself. And as many of these conversations you had, this was one that kind of knocked you a little sideways for a second.
Because it was so crazy. And I realized I could give him logical explanations and stuff, but it wouldn't. I could give him a stack of books from my floor to my ceiling written by PhDs who would tell him that's not the case. He wouldn't buy it.
How did you even get the smelling salts under your nose to kind of reorient you to the present? How did you do that before you rendered the best answer of all time?
I paused for a moment because I was dumbfounded. He's sitting all smug.
And you're driving and he's got his arms crossed.
Yeah.
And you just had to take a second and just reorient yourself.
Reorient myself and come up with a scenario similar to his.
Okay.
Because that's the only way he's going to see it.
And I guess you asked yourself a question like before you gave him the answer.
Well, he said that all Black people are prone to something.
Totally.
So what are all white people prone to? I quickly thought, and I said, oh, you know what? Here we go. I said, well, they say, I use his authority.
Right.
They say that all white people have a gene in them that makes them a serial killer. He's like, what? I said, yeah. I said, name me 3 Black serial killers. He couldn't even name one.
Of course not.
I gave him one. I said, here's one. Just name me 2.
Maybe 2 more.
He couldn't do it. I said, John Wayne Gacy, Henry Lee Lucas, Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, David Berkowitz, Son of Sam, Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler, on and on and on. I said, son, they're all white. You're a serial killer. He says, Daryl, I never killed anybody. I said, your gene is latent, hasn't come out yet. So he goes, well, that's stupid. I said, well, duh. I said, you're right. It is stupid, but it's no more stupid for me to say that about you than what you said about me. And he got very quiet. But you could see his wheels were spinning.
Totally.
And then he changed the subject. But within 5 months, he left the Klan based on that conversation.
So he leaves the Klan and you have collected multiple robes and hoods and other ornaments.
I've been given all kinds of medallions and say KKK member in good standing. When people quit, they give them to me.
And what's it like for you to have
surreal
possessions? Okay.
Surreal. But now I'm speaking of transparency and credibility and all that.
For sure.
I'm going to be honest with you. The first time I got a robe, what am I going to do with it?
Exactly.
I knew I wanted it. I knew it would have some significance because the guy was going to throw it away. I said, no, give it to me. He goes, why would you want it? I said, I don't know, but I just want it. And so he gave it to me. And he gave me all this Klan stuff. But I brought it home. And I know people are wondering, so I'm going to go ahead and answer the question for them.
Sure.
They want to ask the question, but they're afraid to ask. So I will ask the question for them. They want to know, did I ever try it on? The answer is yes. I put it on. I put it on and I put on the hood and there's a mirror right behind this wall here. And I stood in front of that mirror to see what I looked like. I looked stupid. So I took it off. True story. So then I didn't know what to do with it. So I took it down to my basement. Half of my basement is finished where I would have band rehearsals and things like that. The other half is unfinished. It's the laundry area. So I hung it on the rafters. So I would see it every day when I go down to get fresh clothing or do laundry or whatever. And it came to the point where it was there, but I didn't see it. Just part of the decor. I just ignored it. And so that went on for a while. And every quarter, every 3-4 months, the water meter guy comes to my house. And if I'm home, he comes in and goes downstairs and reads the numbers. and then sends me a bill, a week later. So he comes, hey, Mr. Davis, how you doing? And hey, man. And he goes on down. And usually he'll say, bye, Mr. Davis. And he goes. This time, hey, Mr. Davis, went down. She must say he came up looking at me, kind of weird.
Yeah.
And, he didn't even say goodbye, just went out the door. I think that's odd. And I'd long forgotten about the road. And I went out later on that afternoon somewhere. I was in my car. Oh, crap. That guy saw the robe hanging and he's wondering what the heck is going on in this house.
Yeah, for sure. How do I even make sense of this?
Right. So I took it down from there and put it in the closet. But now I've got so many of those things, I keep most of them locked up off-site.
So at the time when you received your first robe, you didn't know why you wanted it. You just knew that you wanted it. Now, looking back, do you have a sense more of why it's important for you to have those in your possession?
Well, I knew it was important to have it in my possession back then. But back then, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Obviously, I'm not going to wear it. Later, I decided I wanted to open my own museum. So I've got a 501c3. I'm looking for a place to purchase. I don't want to rent space because the rent goes up every year. And I'd like to purchase a place. And I have a ton of stuff. I'd like to put on display in a museum and do some other things in the museum regarding race and acceptance and tolerance and all that reconciliation. So now I've got a ton of ropes and hoods and swastika flags and all kinds of craziness. So I know what I'm doing with it now. At the time, I just knew that I had to have it. The significance of having it to me then was, hey, you know what? This is this person's uniform. And at one time, I was the enemy. Can you imagine somebody like one of our U.S. generals taking off their uniform and giving it to somebody in the Taliban or to somebody in Al-Qaeda? That's basically what happened.
Yeah.
A Klansman took off his robe and hood and gave it to the very person he used to persecute.
The so-called enemy.
Yeah.
So really a big believer that we are all creating meaning. We're all searching for meaning in this lifetime. Can you tell me about the meaning of your work as you see it?
Well, you probably were told this, I'm sure, as a child, and your kids probably heard it too at some point, that a tiger does not change its stripes. A leopard does not change its spots. That's who they are.
Yep.
So as much as I knew about the Klan going into it, because I have a ton of books on Black supremacy, white supremacy, you name it. I've got the books, I got the library, and I've read them all. But I was under the impression that a tiger does not change its stripes and a leopard does not change its spots. Why would I think that a Klansman or Klanswoman would change their robe and hood? That's who they are. But I came to realize, guess what? They can change because a tiger and leopard are born with those spots and stripes. They can't change that. A Klansman or Klanswoman is not born with that robe and hood.
So
that is a learned behavior. And what can be learned can be unlearned. It may take a little while. Like, for example, I'm going to stand up here. You all see this right here, right?
They can't see it, but you're showing your paunch.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Guess what? I didn't always look like that. I was slim and trim at one time. And I'm trying to get back there. I'm getting there slowly but surely.
Awesome.
The great thing is I'm moving in the right direction. But I did not put this thing on overnight. Guess what? There's nothing anybody can do that's going to cause me to lose it. I wish I could, a magic pill and it'd be gone by morning. No, that does not exist. Those people did not become indoctrinated, ingrained in that ideology overnight. It's something that was incremental, little by little, and now they're saturated with it. There's no way you're going to get them out of it like that. Yes, there have been a few that have seen the light instantly and, whoa, what was I thinking? But the majority, they've been in there for a long time. It's part of their way of life. And that's not going to change overnight. It's going to change incrementally over time, just like losing weight.
So good. I loved the documentary about you. And one of the things that actually hurt my feelings as a fan was when someone accused you of fetishizing. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And having these uniforms. And when you were describing your mission, I mean, what I understand is this is your contribution to trying to create a more just and humane world where people can actually live together, love each other, and be kind. That's what I get. What do you want people to know that maybe they don't really understand about your work?
Don't really get angry, those detractors. Is it frustrating? Yes. Is it disappointing? Yes. Am I angry with them? No, not really. I wish, not that I agree with them, but I realize that they have not had the experiences that I've had. They've not done some of the things that I've done or sat down and talked with some of the people that I've talked with. Ironically, there's a bit of a hypocrisy there because these same people that you're talking about who claim that I was fetishizing the roads and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. These are the very people who marched back and forth with a bullhorn in front of the Baltimore City Police Department when the police had shot and killed a black man unarmed. And then they put another one in handcuffs and broke his back in the paddy wagon. These are things that they perpetrated upon black people, these cops in Baltimore City. In fact, in the documentary, you saw me pull out a robe and hood of the leader of the Maryland Klan, and then I also showed you his police uniform.
Yep, you sure did. And in the TED Talk as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in police departments. Not all police departments, but what if you have that in them? And Baltimore certainly has more than just that guy, because he told me. Anyway, here's the hypocrisy. So they're telling me that I'm sitting down talking with these people, and it's not my job as a black person to teach a white supremacist how to treat us black people. I disagree with that. And I'll tell you why I disagree with that. When you've been here as long as I have, I've been here for 400 years as a descendant of slaves, right?
Yes.
When you have been here that long,
yes,
and people have been treating you poorly for 400 years, maybe it's time to change up and have a new strategy. And if not considering it your job to teach them how to treat you, and they're still treating you that way, then maybe you need to teach them how to treat you. And that's what I do. And guess what? I've proven that it's worked. There is my proof, the robe and the hood. And some of these people, like Arno Michaelis, for example, that you mentioned earlier.
Our mutual friend.
That's my brother. Okay. Sure. And many others, okay, have come out with me on stage and renounced that ideology. A lot of them now work hard to de-radicalize people from their own former movement. And they also work hard to prevent young people from joining those movements. So yes, teaching people does work. We need to stop going by the adage, not my brother's keeper. Let's start being our brother's keeper. We all are brothers in this world. And if you have something that I don't have, please share it with me. If I've got something that will benefit you that you don't have, let me share it with you. That's how we make a better place, a better world. Now, back to the hypocrisy. So these people march back and forth in front of the police department, yelling through their megaphone, stop killing black people, da-da-da-da. You know, we are human beings, no justice, no peace, on and on, holding up placards. Is there anything wrong with that? No, nothing wrong with that, okay? Protest is legal, and it's also a good way to bring attention to something and make people listen or whatever.
Agreed.
So what are they doing? I asked, because I said this thing went on for an hour. You only saw 8 or 9 minutes of it. I asked, do you believe that there are white supremacists and KKK in the Baltimore City Police? Oh, yeah, I know there are, blah, blah, blah. Well, he's right. There are some, okay? So you're marching back and forth, telling them not to shoot you, that you're a human being and we're equal and blah, blah, blah. Are you not teaching white supremacists how to treat you? I'm doing the same thing. The only difference is you're teaching white supremacists in a uniform and a badge. I'm teaching white supremacists in a robe and a hood. What's the difference? They're still white supremacists.
Brilliant. So everybody's doing their part, and it's almost like an orchestra or a band that you're playing keyboards and you're saying, hey guys, you do the rhythm section, you guys play guitar, and we got a vocalist over. Well, you're also.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because how do I rectify that? I am a musician. I've been a sideman. I've been a band leader. Go back and forth between whoever I'm working with.
Everything in between.
Everybody in between. If I'm playing with Chuck Berry, I'm a sideman.
Yeah, you are.
And if it's the Daryl Davis band, I'm the band leader. Right? So as a band leader, my job is to foster harmony between all the voices on my stage, whether they are the vocal voice, the instrumental voices, the horn, the piano, the bass, the drums, the guitar. I want harmony. The only time you want dissonance is when it is intentionally injected into the music for effect.
For sure.
Okay? Because if dissonance happens just randomly, that's not music, that's noise.
Exactly.
Somebody hit a bad note or played out of tune or whatever else, which happens occasionally. But, that's noise. It's offensive to the ear. But when you put it in intentionally for special effect,
like Miles Davis and Bitches Brew, it's going to be,
exactly.
it's going to be art.
Exactly. So because I concentrate so much on bringing harmony on my stage, isn't it only normal that when I step off the stage, I would want harmony in the society that surrounds me?
For sure.
So that's why I try to foster that with people with whom I live and must work and must shop in the grocery store with, or live in peace in the neighborhood.
So let's talk about the genesis of how somebody becomes disenfranchised and perhaps prey to hate groups. You and I were offline, we're talking about coal miners who may lose their jobs to people of a different ethnicity and therefore generalize their hatred based on that, and that the Klan might swallow them up. Can you tell me about the genesis of how a person becomes a rabid hater?
They become that way, many different reasons. For some to join those kinds of organizations, those groups, some join because my granddaddy was in the Klan. My daddy was in the Klan. I'm in the Klan. My kids are going to be in the Klan.
Legacy.
It's a family tradition passed down. That can be very strong because people have those family values. It's hard to break somebody away from a family tradition. Others join because they moved into a new town from out of state. And if you're going to assimilate in that new town, the town might be a stronghold for Klan members or whatever. So, you got to join the local country club, the local chamber of commerce, and the local KKK if you want to do business in that town. Other times it could be a situation where you lose a job, you get laid off, but your job's not gone, but somebody else is doing your job who doesn't look like you. And you were never racist before, but the company that you'd worked for 25 years, they decided to get greedy and they knew they could save money if they got rid of their employees, who were mostly predominantly white, who they've been paying this much money to for 25 years, and hire somebody who just arrived in this country, legally or illegally, just pay them that much under the table or whatever.
And they're showing kind of a shrinking hand, as you say, pay them that much, pay them less.
Yeah, exactly. So you pay them just a fraction of what you were paying the white employees. So you lay off those white employees and bring in these immigrants, legal or illegal, to do the job. And that way the company saves a ton of money. So that can also foster resentment. And of course, the Klan will come there and use that as a catalyst to inspire fear and hatred in those people and recruit them by saying, look, the blacks have the NAACP. The Jews have the ADL. Who stands up for the white man? Nobody but us, the Ku Klux Klan. Your job isn't gone, but you're gone. Your job is still there, but some such and such is working your job. Why don't you come join us? We will fight together and get your job back. So these people who were never racist to begin with, they were happy, they were getting paid, they could feed their family, clothe their kids. Now they're out of work. They can't get another job because the job that they've been doing for 25 years is the only job that they know how to do. And now the bank is knocking on their door for some mortgage and it's going to foreclose on their property because they have no money. So what choice do they have? They think, you know what do I have to lose? I've lost everything already. Sign me up. So people get in that way. So there are many different avenues as to how they get in. And that's why it's so important to do your homework. Understand the path that led that person to join that group or adopt that ideology. Because not everybody is the same. I often say a Klanswoman or a Klansman is not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. They come from all different walks of life, all different educational backgrounds. Some are doctors and lawyers. We've even had Supreme Court justices. We've even had presidents of the United States be in the Ku Klux Klan. President Warren G. Harding was sworn into the Klan in the green room of the White House.
Unbelievable. I did not know that.
Harry Truman, before Harry Truman became president, he joined the Klan for a very short time. He didn't like it. He got out of it. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black was in the Klan when he got the appointment to sit on the Supreme Court. He had to leave the Klan in order to be on the Supreme Court, but he was in the Klan when he got that appointment. Hugo Black from Alabama, Justice Hugo Black. Senator Robert Byrd, more recently, right? Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia, who was the oldest living senator who just died a few years ago, in the last 7 or 8 years, he was the Grand Kleagle of West Virginia. Kleagle means a recruiter. So he was the state recruiter for the Klan in West Virginia back in the 1940s. And then he wanted to become Senator Robert Byrd. He was a racist to begin with, but over time he changed and he did a lot of good things.
Well, one of the things that you're speaking to again, and you're illustrating it so beautifully, is that you have to understand the plight of these individuals and really, really walk a mile in their shoes. And as I was imagining you even trying on the robe and, as you said, looking ridiculous, I think that was probably an important cognitive exercise for you as well.
What it was when I interviewed the first guy in the hotel room, and I asked him, he had a little case with him.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, you bring your robe in here? He goes, yeah. I said, would you mind putting it on for me? And then take some pictures. And so he was in a suit and tie. He took off his suit jacket And then he popped open the case on one of the hotel room beds and pulled out his Grand Dragon robe. And he would later become an Imperial Wizard. And I got both those robes now. But anyway, he put out his head and he put on this robe. Now I'm sitting at the table. He's standing in front of the dresser in this hotel room. And his bodyguard is adjusting his hood and he's straight and flipping out his cape and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just sitting there looking. Now, I've been talking to this guy in his suit and tie for a couple hours. And he said a lot of nasty things, such as, I'm the criminal thing, the welfare and the brain thing. But, it didn't really make me angry. But now he's sitting 2 feet in front of me. And now he's standing right over there in front of the mirror, putting on this Robin Hood. And Adam, let me tell you something. I really can't explain it, but I had a whole quagmire of feelings that were gushing up in me all at the same time. I felt angry. I felt bitter. I felt sorry. I felt sad. I felt violent, like I could have jumped up and just
for sure
hurt this guy for all the atrocities that have been committed against my ancestors by people wearing robes just like that I'm seeing 5 feet in front of me. Okay, so all this was going on. And I kept telling myself, Daryl, no. You invited this man here to do an interview. And he didn't have to accept it. Even after he saw you, he still accepted it. He came in, he did what you asked him to do. You asked him to put on his Robin Hood. He complied with your wishes. You don't ask somebody to do something and then they do it and then you go beat them up for it. Doesn't make any sense. So I just calmed myself down. But here's what I noticed. While he was sitting at the table in his suit and tie, you're probably old enough to remember Superman.
Oh, come on.
And the mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent, of course, he can mild in his little suit and tie.
Yep.
And then he rips off the clothing and he becomes Superman. I saw that transformation. When this dude took off his suit jacket and put on that robe, all of a sudden he was no longer hunched over. He was erect. He was Superman. Totally. It gave him that feeling. So that's one of the reasons why later on, a year or so later, when I got my first Robin Hood, I wanted to see if it had that effect on me. But
of course not. It would do the opposite. Your inner 400-year-old who is really tied all the way back from when slaves were brought over here did not register with that in terms of that empowerment. But in his case, because of the legacy and because of his desire for affiliation and desire to be respected and heard, what's funny, you probably even remember this great Bugs Bunny episode where you see Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd each wearing different hats and their personalities changing on just the way Superman's would. And we all know that when we put something on, it's meaningful oftentimes.
Yeah. That's why when you put on your uniform, whether it's army or military,
if you're going to go out and play a show, you probably have your show attire. One of my favorite Daryl Davis-isms is we live in the space age and we can't solve things with Stone Age brains. And
we're living in space age times, but we're still thinking with Stone Age minds.
And one of the things that you're talking about, a space age mind, is the fact that you see life through the lens of a scientist, an anthropologist, a curious individual who may get furious, but you tolerate your furiousness by cultivating more curiosity and seeing the long game. I'm just having this profound wish that you had, I don't know if it exists, but like the Daryl Davis seminar to teach to various organizations who are trying to do good out in the world and trying to create a ripple effect, just like you are. By the way, you take one Klansman and get him to usher himself out, you impact the lives of literally hundreds or more people by that one decision.
Snowballs. Yes, it does.
And I'm wondering, could you actually create a training program? Because you said in your TED Talk that everybody can learn this, and I'm wondering.
Absolutely. And I do seminars and I do lectures and workshops on exactly that. How to listen, how to forge a path through the middle of adversity. It's gotten to the point now where I have been invited to speak Klan meetings and rallies.
What do you say at a Klan meeting?
I tell the truth. I don't agree with what they're doing. I tell them why. And they become curious. And then every so often, somebody will contact them. They're not going to just fall out right there in front of all their buddies, but they will email me or call me or something and talk to me on the side, tell me they want to get out and would I like their Robin Hood? And I get it in the mail.
So before I get to the final question, Daryl, one of the funniest things that I've heard about you is, for the sake of the long game, again, the relationship and keeping your credibility with these folks so that they will hear sense, they will hear reason from you that, quite frankly, that their Stone Age mentalities will have some space age. Yeah, you don't win the fight by being right, but you loaned the Klan
my bus.
your bus.
Yeah.
Like, I was screaming when I found this out. Like, it worked. Can you tell the story about loaning the bus?
Okay. Well, it's not that I want to promulgate their message. Okay. So here's the story about the bus. So this Klan leader who lived in another county in Maryland, he was an imperial wizard, national leader, and he would rent a bus from some vehicle rental place up in his county. When he'd have a rally that was out of the county or a little ways away, the Klan would all meet at his house or wherever, and they'd all get on the bus and then go. So they traveled together. It was local, of course. Everybody just shows up there. But so he needed the bus. And it got to the point where people knew it was the Klan up there in that county, and they would throw rocks and things at the bus, break out the windows, tear it up. And so the guy was having to return it to the rental place, and they said, no more. We're tired of our buses getting torn up. And so they refused to rent the bus to the Klan anymore. So he called me and asked me if I knew of any bus rental places down in my county, that he could possibly go to, because maybe they wouldn't know him and they would rent the bus to him. So I said, well, I'm sure there are some around here, but, I don't have to use them because, I got my own bus for my van. So what day is your thing? And he gave me the date, and I checked my calendar. It was a Saturday. I was off that Saturday. I said, look here, why don't you just take my bus? And he goes, come on, man, be serious. I said, I am being serious. He goes, you're going to lend me your bus for a Klan round? I said, yeah. He goes, well, he realized I was serious. He knows me. And he says, well, how much do you want? I said, I don't want anything. You're my friend. I'm going to give you this bus. I said, all I asked was that you put gas back in it. He goes, you serious? I said, yeah. He was okay. So he and one of his other guys drove down and got the bus and left their pickup truck here and took the bus. It was pretty funny. And then after the rally, he brings the bus here, and about 15 Klansmen are sitting right here in my living room.
Right? What I'm looking at right now.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, they're all sitting there, and I bought beer for them. I don't drink myself, but I bought up some beer and everything and had little condiment things. And all but two of them were fine having the drinks and eating. These two other ones, they were very quiet and very upset. You could tell they were not comfortable in this black man's house. They wanted nothing to do with me whatsoever. And shortly thereafter, they both quit. And shortly thereafter, the Imperial Wizard began getting anonymous hate mail, the same kind of hate mail he used to send out to people. Now he is the recipient of it, saying that he was in bed with Daryl Davis, he's an in-lover, and so forth and so on. And that also made him see the hatred being reflected back at him, the same kind that he would reflect out on others. And all because he accepted this bus from me, and he came to my house, hung out, and, socialized, and all that kind of stuff. That was also a seed that was planted that would eventually be the straw that broke the camel's back. All these straws piling up. So he saw the light, and my bus got back, with full tank of gas, no damage to the bus. The Klan had a good time. I was there. I went to the march and watched them. And what was funny was there were cops up and down the street because, you have to have a permit. And so they had lined the street, but they had not publicized it. Nobody knew the Klan was going to come. And they had no idea what they were going to arrive in or what time it was going to be. So there were cops dotted all along the street. And so I showed up because I knew where they were going to come, but they told me, it's my bus, right? And so there were two cops standing there. And I brought with me my girlfriend and my secretary at the time. And so the three of us were standing there. And so one of the cops walks up and says, are you all looking to cross the street? And they said no. And they walked a little further away. My secretary smoked a lot. So she walked about 10 feet away, and my girlfriend went with her and just talked with her or whatever. So I'm standing there by myself. And so the cop comes over to me. He said, are you waiting for something? And I said, yes, I am. So I said, he's concerned. The Klan's going to show up any moment now. And here's this black guy standing.
For sure.
And so he says, are you waiting for something? I said, yes, I am. He goes, what is it that you're waiting for? And I said, the same thing you are. And he says, what would that be? And I said, the Klan. He said, well, what makes you think they're going to be here? I said, well, they told me. And he looked at me like, this guy is just messing with me.
Totally.
So he walks over to my girlfriend and my secretary.
Both of them are Caucasian, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And he says to them, what are you all waiting for? And they said, the Klan. And he says, well, how do you know they're going to be here? They pointed at me.
He told me.
Right. And so these cars are going up and down the street, and the cops are looking at each car. And then here comes the bus. And your wizard is driving it, And there are all these robes and hoods sitting in the bus, and they're waving at me, and I'm waving at them. And I said to the couple, I said, there they are. And they looked at me like, how in the world? Why are they waving at each other? And so they go on down. What they did was they drove the march route and then made a U-turn and came back up because they wanted to see what it all entailed. And then they parked where they're supposed to park, which is where I was standing. So they were just scratching their heads like, this is surreal.
Totally. Have I just entered the twilight zone? What's amazing also is that you're not sheerly manipulating these people. You're actually creating real relationships with the hope to change. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that it works at all, I believe this is the only way to make it work. You don't get people's affiliation or loyalty through violent means. You get it through friendship, and you get that credibility. And I'm just thinking about this rabbi who was in Colorado, I believe, who got some hate mail from the KKK, a wizard of some kind, the terminology better than I do. And he writes back to this man, I believe you need a little love. I have some.
Yeah, the guy came up with him.
You know about this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely,
And so you're doing that. And that seems to be the way. I apologize. Before I get to the final question, who have been your influences? Who have been the minds and the lives that you, since no person is an island, who have been the people who...
Well, I have a lot of heroes, and you're surprised by some of them. Of course, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, but also Evel Knievel, Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, each one for different reasons.
I think I know the reason for the Evel Knievel, because I think you kind of are him, but why Evel Knievel?
Because Evel Knievel did things on his own terms. Nobody cheats death. Evel Knievel should have been dead. Well, he's dead now. But Evel Knievel died of natural causes. He should have been dead a long time ago. He broke every bone in his body more than once. He should have been out a long time ago. But he did what he wanted to do on his own terms. He did not let death take him. He cheated death. He died on his own terms of natural causes.
Oh, man.
I admire that. I want to tell you what's going on today so that your listeners will understand. And you can look it up. You can verify it. The media does not talk about it, but they know. I learned this back in 1982 from the head of the American Nazi Party. They told a lot of lies, but what he said about this is absolutely true. First of all, let me give you a little bit of background. As this country was built on a two-tier society, white supremacy at the top and slavery at the bottom. And as we progress through the decades, we progress like that. Okay?
So your two hands, which are still different, they're going upwards. So while the plight of Black people has gone up, it's still below.
Right. So let's say white supremacy is one of my hands on top, and about a foot below that hand is slavery.
Yep.
And as we move up, we maintain that foot separation as we progress through the years. But maybe we've come a little ways. So now my slave hand is only maybe 6 inches, 5 inches from my supremacist hand. And
less of a difference.
That way. But it's never happened evenly on the same plane. Now, that's how this country was built. When you and I were kids, I'm older than you, I'm 64. But even though I'm older, proportion is still the same. When you were a kid, when I was a kid, the Black population in this country was only 12%. Native Americans, 1%. Hispanic, Latino people, almost 2%. Asians, almost 3%. Whites were like 86, 87%. The U.S. Census is taken every 10 years.
Yep.
All you have to do is go to uscensus.gov and you can see the trends every decade.
Of the ethnicities and the comprise the American people. Yeah.
And today, Black people remain just over 12%, like 12.9, they say 13%. Native Americans remain at 1%. Asians have almost doubled. They're almost 6%. Hispanic Latino people have more than quadrupled. They're 17 point something percent. So if you just take Latino, Hispanic people at 17% and Black people at 12%, add those two together, that's 29% non-white right there. Almost a third of the population is non-white. Okay, let alone the Native Americans and the Asians and whoever else. It is well predicted, and I learned this back in 1982, in the year 2042, which is only 2 decades from now, this country, for the first time in its history, will become 50-50. 50% white, 50% non-white. And while there is a large percentage of white people in this country who don't care, they say, hey, that's cool, that's evolution, no big deal, doesn't bother me. There's also a large percentage who do care, and they're freaking out. And what they tell me, these people who do care, neo-Nazis, KKK, alt-right, people like that, Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They call it the browning of America, or white genocide through miscegenation. And they're very concerned about that. And when I first started this work about 40 years ago, there were only like three groups. There was the Klan, some white power skinheads, and some neo-Nazis. Today, you've got the Klan, white power skinheads, the neo-Nazis, the alt-right, the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo Boys, the Three Percenters, on and on and on. And they're all saying, come join us, come join us. We're going to take our country back. We're going to send those people back to where they belong, on and on. And so you had this whole proliferation of all these different supremacist type groups. And what they're concerned about is that their identity is being erased. There used to be a term in this country that you rarely hear anymore called white flight. Are you familiar with white flight?
I am.
Okay, so just for your listeners, back in the day, the 50s and 60s, a lot of neighborhoods had covenants. They were all white neighborhoods. And if you were a white person and you bought a house in that neighborhood, there was a covenant that if you moved from that neighborhood, you were not allowed to sell your house to a Jew or to a Black. And people abided by those covenants. And then, of course, the government got involved and got rid of all that discrimination. But even though it was now illegal to have those covenants, real estate agents would not show Jewish people or Black people to those neighborhoods. And then, of course, later on when they would, and now Blacks and whoever else are moving into those neighborhoods, the white people who were already there would leave the neighborhood and move to another all-white neighborhood. And when the Blacks and Jews or whoever would move there, they'd leave again. That's called white flight. Well, guess what? White flight today barely exists because the color of the American landscape has changed so much that anywhere you go now, there's already somebody there who doesn't look like you.
Yep.
So where are you going to fly to, right? So you got to deal with it. And this is what is really upsetting these people. So they're fearing that their identity is being erased. And our last president played upon those fears. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing murderers across the border. He's playing upon those fears. And then he mentions one point, why are all these people coming here from S-hole countries? Why can't we have more people here from Norway? I love Norway. I've been to Norway several times, but there's not very many people in Norway who look like me. So what was he implying? So these people are running and joining these groups that are promising to take our country back, to make America great again. And so when the group fails to deliver, bringing our country back or taking it back or making it great again, some of these people who just joined get frustrated. And they say, you know what? If the Klan can't do it or the neo-Nazis can't do it, I'll do it myself. And that's when they walk into a Black church in South Carolina and boom, boom, boom. Or into the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Boom, boom, boom. The Oak Creek, Wisconsin Sikh Indian Temple and kill 6 Sikh Indians doing worship. Or the Walmart in El Paso and take out 23 Hispanic people. Or the Buffalo grocery store a few weeks ago, right? These people are called lone wolves. And that if they live, if law enforcement doesn't kill them, or when they get arrested and stuff, they tell you that they're trying to invigorate the race war, which is called RAHOWA. RAHOWA, RAHOWA, which are the first two letters of these three words, racial holy war, or in short, the race war. They call it RAHOWA in the white supremacist vernacular. Anyway, so that's what's going on. They are fearing their erasure of their identity, and they can't handle it. And as we get closer and closer to 2042, unfortunately, we're going to see more and more of these lone wolves. And this is why we need to be vigilant. We need to talk about this because it's happening. And we have intelligence agencies that have operatives, agents who fit the profile of some of these groups. And they can join those groups undercover and gather intelligence and report it back. And some of those plots get squashed. For example, if you recall, last year, there was a group out in the state of Michigan that was going to kidnap and murder the governor, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And we already had an intelligence operatives in that group. And that's how that plot got foiled, because we already had people working in that group. But guess what? You may be able to infiltrate a group, but you cannot infiltrate a lone wolf. That's only one person. How do you get inside the mind of one person? So we're going to see more and more of those lone wolves as we approach the 2042.
So discouraging. And so it's just like, and I'm just getting a sense of what it might at times be like to see the world through your lenses, because you are keeping your eyes on what's going on and you understand the trends. I'm wondering, with that in mind, let's just say hypothetically, and this is my final question, even though I've got a gazillion more that
we can always do a part 2.
Daryl, I would love a part 2.
All right.
Thank you in advance. If the president said, Daryl, I want you to create a prescription for society to do better when it comes to countering hate, when it comes to reducing the number of lone wolf incidents, when it comes to all of this stuff, what would be I know it'd be maybe 100 hours, but would be kind of the high level view of what you would suggest?
I would round up people who are still in the movement and invite them to come sit on my board, sit on my round table, and see what we all can work out together. Let me mitigate their fears. Let me understand what their fears are. Let me explain to them what other people are feeling, because they're in a different circle and they don't see anything outside their circle. They're in an echo chamber. So if I bring people in who all believe the same way I do, then all we do is just sit around, have a round table, preach to the choir, and nothing happens. We need to bring other people in who share different views than we do. Bring them into the table, include them. Inclusivity is what prevents exclusivity.
Oh, that's such a beautiful thing. And Daryl, I got to tell you, I told you this offline, and I'm just going to say it again. I'm beyond grateful to you that you've decided to use this dash between your birth date and your death date, which may, God willing, be very, very far off. What you're doing with your life is the most important thing I've come across, at least as important as anything I've ever heard.
But listen, you are equally as important, okay? I don't say that in flattery or just to return a compliment. I'm saying it because it's true. And let me explain, what I mean by that. We all play a role. Our country, our society can only become one of two things. It can become, number one, that which we sit back and watch it become, or it can become, number two, that which we stand up and make it become. And we all have to ask ourselves the question, do I want to sit back and see what my country becomes? Or do I want to stand up and make it become what I want to see? And yes, I'm on the front line. You can be on the back line. You can be on the sideline. You can be online. We all have to work together. And each one of those lines is equally important to the whole product. For example, you can probably tell me the name of your favorite movie of all time.
Yep.
That's a given. And you can probably tell me who the lead actor and lead actress was.
For sure.
Maybe you can tell me who the director was, but can you tell me who the scriptwriter was? The name of the cameraman, the name of the guy who did all the stunts, the name of the wardrobe manager, the name of, you don't know those names.
Good point. Such a good point.
Each one of those people played a role to make that movie get those 10 Oscars or whatever it got, to make you all excited about that becoming your favorite movie. It wasn't just those two stars. Yeah, they acted great and they played their roles. But what about the angles of the camera? What about the person who wrote the music, the underscore that made it creepy or made it whatever it was? Okay? Everybody played a role. That's why it takes 10 minutes for the credits to roll at the end of the movie. The best boy, the key grip, the lighting guy, whatever. They all played a role making that movie get an Oscar. So that's what I'm saying. Whether you're on the front line, everybody sees you, or whether you're on the back line behind the camera, on the sideline doing publicity, or being online like you are, doing a podcast, each of it is important. So you are playing a crucial role to my mission. You are promoting what I'm doing. You're sharing what I'm doing with other people that they become inspired. So I am grateful to you. This is what we're talking about, okay? We all play a role.
Beautifully said, Daryl. Thank you so much for that reflection. And it's such a great reminder that behind every great person is an entire team of unsung heroes who played a part in that person. I'm just to close, I'm remembering Joe Montana, my very favorite quarterback, 'cause I'm from San Francisco, was hugely celebrated. And Bubba Paris, one of his biggest protectors, said, without me, there is no Joe Montana. And so I'm just going to say, to your point, amen, brother. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your time. And this has been great, man.
Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to doing it again, part 2.
And I look forward to a hug in person.
You got it.
All right, man. This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.